Does he not have a shred of moral decency within him? We are looking at a 23-year-old boy who has been kept locked in solitary confinement for 316 days, 23 hours a day, and has been forced to sleep and stand naked. And he hasn't even been found guilty of a crime. America's worst criminals have not been treated in such a manner. And Obama says his confinement is appropriate and meeting basic standards. This is cruel and unusual punishment and meets the standard for qualifying under international law as torture.
My name is Vagabond. I'm a agitator and a filmmaker and an artist and a writer. I have worked with the Puerto Rican independence movement since 1997, and I just wanted to make a connection that maybe a lot of people aren't making about Bradley Manning. And I want to say that Bradley Manning is a political prisoner. He is a political prisoner, a prisoner of politics, or as I like to call it, politricks. He is being held just like other political prisoners are being held, like Russell Maroon Shoatz, who's from the Black Liberation Army, or Oscar Lopez Rivera from the FALN, or Mumia, who is on death row. There is not much of a difference between his treatment and their treatment. And if you take a look around, you'll notice that only political prisoners seem to get this kind of treatment, seem to deal with these kinds of prison conditions and prison sentences, and are facing these kinds of shenanigans, shall we say. And so I just wanted to make it a point to that we should keep in our vocabulary that Bradley Manning is a political prisoner. The other point that I want to bring up is that there's a difference between morality and legality.
Woo!
And that there, in an ideal world, our morals would guide our legality. Our morality would guide our legality. And too many times throughout history, and especially now, our morality keeps bouncing up and rubbing up against and conflicting with our legality. And there needs to be a clear, concise difference between what is legal and what is moral. Because a lot of times, in the world that we're living in today, what's moral is turning out to be illegal. Thank you very much.
Yeah!
Free Bradley Manning! Free Bradley Manning!
Free Bradley Manning!
Hi.
2 weeks ago, I was in the office of a congressman, and today the woman who set up that meeting told me that if I spoke here today at this rally, she would no longer do business with me.
Wow.
So the blacklist is back.
Uh-huh.
But that's nothing, because they want to kill Julian Assange.
That's right.
So Julian Assange, to me, is like a real-life Robin Hood, or Neo from The Matrix. He sort of fights for us. He follows in the footsteps of Geronimo, A. Brown, by revealing in black and white the U.S. government's complicity in the murder and torture of innocents. I've felt for years that the last defenders of our freedom would be the cyber anarchists or people like Anonymous. And we're not at freedom's end yet, but for example, the average Briton is recorded on cameras 300 times daily. And the Lord of Flies, nestled within America's intelligence establishment, actually wants to build devices that will enable it to determine when we're lying. Well, there's hope. I'm a mathematician, and there are mathematical methods with practical significance that enable us at least to send messages encrypted so that no one reasonably who's not intended to receive the message, no one reasonably can decrypt the messages. And this comes from the fact that it's hard to actually factor, it seems, the product of two large prime numbers. And this is the reason why the Lord of Flies wants to prohibit our using these kinds of methods. Well, there are two ways that we can protect Julian Assange, founder of Wikileaks. First, we can complete the message, or the mission. First, the Lord of Flies, who wishes to shut down Wikileaks, is going from place to place. And we now see the sham of, say, the neutrality of Switzerland, a country that the UN Security Council should have passed a resolution about years ago for the protection of drug lords, dictators, and the people who make cuckoo clocks. Interpol is not illegitimate, We can see Sweden's servility to the United States, which rivals that of British Prime Minister and presidential poodle Tony Blair. But the way to prevent an epidemic, they tell us in epidemiology, is to make sure that the reproductive ratio is greater than 1. That's the number of people on average who will get infected by a sick person. So I say, let's spread the dis-ease. So for every Wikileaks site that goes down, we should put 2 more up. And already, of course, there are hundreds of mirrors of WikiLeaks. But a second way to protect Julian Assange is with what I call the golden mean. Not the golden rule, but the golden mean. It's to do unto others what they would do unto you. So American cowards have threatened Assange and his associates and their families, and myself, with death. Right-wing politicians and pundits have called for the execution of the people behind WikiLeaks. Nothing stops the left from doing the same, except the will, which is lacking because American liberals often want to make friends with the enemy. For example, President Scipio Africanus Obama said of the war criminals in his predecessor's administration, quote, "This is a time for reflection, not retribution." And now he says to his Attorney General that he wants to, quote, "hold people accountable," unquote, meaning, of course, Julian Assange. So let's make an example, just as the Lord of Flies wished to make an example of Assange, with 3 weapons. 1, pick any individual who has called for Assange's death, shut down that individual's websites with denial of service attacks. 2, publicly accuse that individual of treason. Feel free to make up any reason as to why, as the gnats of America's right-wing media have no qualms about using this word improperly, and explicitly point out that treason in the United States carries a death penalty. 3, put that individual's contact information, along with that of his associates, on a website, on Facebook, on everything. The correctness of this approach stems from ideas in evolutionary game theory. There's something called tit for tat. It's logical, it's ethical, and it's legal, although naturally it makes sense to set up these non-lethal internet SWAT teams outside the United States. Very soon the cowards calling for Julian Assange's death will become quiet. And in the quiet that kills hysteria, we may eventually succeed in erasing the blacklist and saving the life of Julian Assange, the man who kicked the hornet's nest.